The Forsaken Prince is back. This time he has a new name, the Light of the Traveler, and no memories. He has become one of us, but sadly for him, even though he has no recollection of his past life, everyone else has. Hi guys and welcome to Gaming Watcher. My name is Uldren and in this video I will tell you one of the saddest stories in all of Destiny. The story of Uldren Sov, the Forsaken Prince. It is a story of pain and sadness, of dark manipulation and unspeakable actions that cannot be taken back or forgiven. It is a tale of a hero's fall from grace. Uldren Sov is the brother of Mara Sov. Together they are the prince and the queen of the awoken people. In this video, I will not be telling the story of Queen Mara or the awoken people. I will only focus on Uldren so we can get an understanding of his actions that led to him appearing in Destiny 2 Beyond Light. It's also worth mentioning his other title, the Master of Crows. Uldren has an organization of spies called the Crows that obtain information from around the solar system to help him and Mara in their endeavors. The first time we meet Uldren Sov is in the Destiny 1 campaign, where we venture to the reef to speak with Queen Mara. We have decided to venture into the Black Garden to kill the heart of the garden in an attempt to stop the birthing of the Variks and begin the healing of the Traveler. The awoken people are the only ones that have ever ventured into the garden. Actually, this was an accomplishment by Uldren, which I will get into in just a little bit. In this first meeting, it's clear that Uldren does not trust or like Guardians. He is very hostile and does not want to help us in any way. This is important for the later developments in his story, but why does Uldren have such a hate for the Guardians? At this point in the story, it's just a matter of opinion. Uldren thinks the Guardians are weak-minded, warmongering creatures not worthy of wielding the power that have been bestowed upon them by the Traveler. Call it jealousy, call it pride, no matter the phrasing, these were Uldren's feelings towards the Guardians at our first meeting in the Queen's throne room, and time, it would seem, would not make him any fonder of the Lightbearers. In this first meeting with Uldren, he reluctantly agrees to help us enter the Black Garden if we can return to him with the Gate Lord's Eye. So we venture to Venus to slay a Gate Lord and return with the Eye. Uldren smirkingly agrees to this because he expects us to die in the process. But of course we prevail, and upon returning with the Eye, Uldren once more resists helping us until the Queen orders him to. Mara, of course, knows that helping the Guardians and having them in debt to her is a huge advantage. So Uldren ultimately helps us get into the Black Garden. And this is the last time that we see him in the Destiny 1 vanilla campaign. Why was Uldren so reluctant to help us into the garden? Well, as mentioned before, Uldren is, at this point, the first person to have entered the garden, with his trusted companion and crow, Joylon. They did this mainly to impress Mara. You see, Uldren Sov, as much as he loves and supports his sister, hates standing in her shadow. Uldren has lived his life in the shadow of his powerful sister and feels that even though he is loved and respected by his people, this might rely heavily on his affiliation with Mara. So while Uldren wants to serve his queen, he also wants to be respected and admired as his own individual person, not as Mara's brother. This is why Uldren constantly seeks accomplishments and conquests. He wants to prove to the people, the queen, and maybe also to himself, that he is truly a powerful being and that serving the queen is a choice that he is making, not something to be taken for granted because of his relation to Mara. These feelings of inadequacy was what drove Uldren to crazy decisions like breaking into the Black Garden, which has never been done before, and also to the horrific acts committed by him later in the story, which we will get to. The Black Garden is a mysterious realm separated from time and space. No one knows its origin, but it's referred to as the birthplace of the Variks, and it houses the Black Heart, an entity that intrinsically is linked to the darkness. At this point in time, no one had ever entered the garden, and so no one knew what you would encounter if you were to do so. This was the perfect feat for Uldren to prove his power. He was convinced that within the garden he would find secrets and knowledge that would help the awoken people immensely in the future could he just gain entrance. So he forged a plan to go to the entrance of the garden on Mars and lure out the Gate Lord guarding it, then baiting the nearby Cabal army to kill the Gate Lord for him. A lot can be said about Uldren Sov, but he is no simpleton. His wits and cunning would impress most. He succeeded with his plan to enter the Black Garden. Proud, Uldren returned to his sister. Finally, she would be surprised by his achievements. Finally, she would recognize that he too was extremely powerful and that she should be grateful that he has chosen to serve her. Finally, Uldren would no longer feel like he hadn't earned his place beside the awoken queen. But to his dismay, Mara did not approve. Instead, it angered her that he would defy her and go into the garden despite her warnings not to. Uldren suddenly felt alone. Again. How is he ever going to break the chains of being his sister's brother? How is he ever going to escape this enormous shadow that she casts over him? He loves her, and he wants nothing but to serve her, but he wants to do so out of his own free will, and he wants her and the entire awoken people to acknowledge that. When Uldren thinks about the garden and the heart, he realizes that the heart might just be a trap. A lure for someone who seeks out and destroys what they don't understand. A lure for guardians. This all precedes the first meeting with us in Destiny 1, so at this point Uldren knew about this and had his suspicions that by sending us into the garden, he might be sending us straight into a trap. We can therefore conclude that Uldren Sov is not particularly on our side, nor is he particularly against us. He is, as the Exo-Stranger describes the awoken people.
Ah, yes, the awoken. Out there wavering between the light and the dark. A side should always be taken, little light. Even if it's the wrong side.
Throughout Uldren's story, we will see him changing sides several times. Let's continue the story of the Forsaken Prince. So what happens next is that the Guardians go to the moon to defeat Crota, the son of Oryx. We succeed, and the demise of Crota of course infuriates Oryx, the Hive God, who then unleashes his wrath on the solar system with his army of Taken. In a huge space battle, Oryx annihilates the awoken people and their queen Mara. Uldren is devastated and crash lands on Mars. From this point, we don't hear from him until the Forsaken campaign in Destiny 2. But even though we don't meet Uldren during this time, it doesn't mean that he is not actively participating in our story. After landing on Mars, Uldren stumbles around. He thinks about his sister. She's dead, along with almost all of their kind. Why? Uldren asks himself why. Why did this happen? Why did she not have a plan? She always had a plan. Why was it not him that had died? Why was he now destined to walk alone, last of his kind, robbed of everything that he held dear? He contemplated suicide, but something pulled him through. Maybe it was his growing hatred for the Guardians and their city. After all, it was them that had angered Oryx. They were the ones who always had to destroy what they did not understand. First the heart of the garden, and then the family of the Hive dynasty. What arrogance these so-called Lightbearers had to just wreak havoc and not care about the repercussions. They were essentially to blame for the demise of his entire people. And her. And maybe it was her. Maybe, just maybe, she was alive. Maybe she had a plan. Maybe her death was not random, but some part of a grander design that Uldren did not yet understand. That had to be it. She was still out there and Uldren was determined to find her no matter the cost. He just needed to get his ship fixed so he could go home and start the search. And this is where we leave Uldren Sov. The next time we hear from him is in the lore book called Kings. Here it is told that Uldren is now a prisoner of the Fallen and the Kell of Kings want to use him to unite the fallen houses. It's clear that Uldren has been captive for some time, enduring daily beatings and torture. He is transformed. He is obedient. He will do whatever it takes to get out of that place. So when the King of Kings asks him to speak to the fallen people and tell him that they need to lay down their banners and unite as one, he is willing. When the King tells him that because he is the broken prince of a broken people, the lesser of two siblings, leader of no one, because he has no pride left, he is perfect for this task. He listens. He listens and agrees. But in the back of his mind, Uldren hears a whisper. He knows that she is out there, and he is going to find her, no matter what it takes. This is when Uldren betrays his people, the people that were once so fond of him, what is left of them anyway. Uldren travels with the Fallen. They're raiding the asteroid belt, knocking out ships headed to Earth. They're even trying to destabilize the reef, the home of the awoken people, even further. Uldren has become a traitor to his people, killing several of them with his own hands. He's haunted by guilt and the loss of his sister. He does not understand why he has not found her yet, and why she hasn't reached out to him. He has become an ether addict, among other distractions, as the lore book states. Uldren is a shadow of the man that he once was. Back when he entered the garden, he was strong in mind and body, beloved by his people, needed by his sister. He was important. People were relying on him. Now he is killing those same people. Stealing, wrecking, traveling with these forsaken beasts. And it's all because of the Guardians and their arrogance. As Uldren's pain grows, he starts to feel this itch in his eyes. They're always sore and itching, and it's getting worse. And it has gotten worse ever since he crash landed on Mars, really. Uldren believes it is some sort of sickness. Either way, it does not matter. When he finds Mara and saves her, everything will be restored, healed. At this point in the story, Uldren stumbles upon a dying Fallen called Fikrul. Fikrul has been downed by Guardians. Ether hisses through entry and exit rules, cauterized by brutal solar flames, the mark of the golden gun. Uldren hisses in disgust as he traces Guardians' footprints in the dust. They must have sprinted off together in a rush, no doubt to farm some other site where skiffs were coming down with mining parties. Uldren's hatred grows. Suddenly he feels this need, this piercing need to save this Fallen. His hands work fast as he tries to remedy the oozing wounds on this trembling creature. Uldren cries. His tears run down from his face and fall onto the Fallen, into its wounds. A question and an answer burns in his mind. Does he wish to save this poor being? Does he wish it? He does. This Fallen, Fikrul, that Uldren saves, is changed by this. Something has gotten into its blood and it becomes what we know as the Fanatic, the leader of the scorned barons. This is the beginning of Uldren's army of scorn that he unleashes upon us in Forsaken. At this point, Uldren starts to talk to Mara. Somehow she begins reaching out to him, telling him to free her. This is where the Forsaken campaign picks up and we start to see Uldren in the game again. The first time that we see Uldren again, he is pointing a gun straight at a downed Cade 6. This is far from the same Uldren that we met the last time we saw him. He's darkened, some say driven mad by grief over his sister and the guilt of his actions. That might be some of the explanation, but there is more to his insanity than that, as we're about to discover. To make sense of this scene where Uldren has Cade 6 at gunpoint, we need to rewind a little bit. Uldren was captured by Cade and Petra Venj and locked up inside the prison of elders in the Tangled Shore, along with 7 scorned barons and Fikrul, the Fallen that he saved a while back. Cade and Petra locked them up in the most secure cells in the entire prison and ordered the cell block to be sealed off and the prisoners kept a secret. Variks the Loyal, a Fallen that have served the awoken people for a long time, is distraught to see his prince locked up in chains. Petra tells Variks that Uldren has gone mad and that he should not listen to his ramblings under any circumstances. Now a period of time follows where Variks has to take care of the secret prisoners, talking to both Uldren and Fikrul daily. As Variks go about his daily duties, he can't help but question Petra's decision. After all, Uldren is his prince, and he needs him right now. Variks can clearly see that the prince is sick, but he does not agree that he should be locked away. Variks wants to cure the prince and restore him to his former self. He begins noticing that Uldren has a dark shadow in his eyes. He describes it as a fleeting pass of inky darkness that momentarily snuffs the glow of Uldren's eyes. He then notices that the ether coursing through Fikrul is darker than normal ether, and that it behaves differently. He believes that this is somehow causing the prince's madness, and that it is the key to curing it. So he conducts an experiment, or rather, he conducted many experiments. Variks began pulling fallen dregs from the upper floors of the prison to try to inject them with this strange ether running through Fikrul's veins, but it always resulted in death. At last Variks succeeded in his experiment, just not in the way that he thought. Variks ended up sacrificing his own ether supply to infuse it with dark concoction from Fikrul. What he ended up with was dark ether. This dark ether did not transform live fallen, it killed them, but then it resurrected them as Scorn. The dark ether sought out all of the dead fallen scattered all over the floor of the cell block from past experiments and reanimated them. It slipped inside the corpses like a slow inhalation, inflating them, stretching them to the point of boils and bursting, pulling them to their feet. They seethed. Their breathing was steady but hard and fast. They rumbled as if volcanoes lived inside their chests. A black fire rose from their skin as they burned this dark ether like a jet engine burns fuel. What Variks really saw before him was hate-fueled rage incarnate and the beginning of another whirlwind. They were no longer just fallen. Fikrul called them his Scorn. Variks saw what he had created, and in that moment he made a decision. He knew what had to be done. He decided to free Uldren, Fikrul and the Scorned Barons from the prison. Not only that, but he freed all prisoners from their cells to create a distraction for them to escape. Variks himself disappears with the prison's ether supply. This is where the Forsaken campaign picks up. We're called to the prison of elders because of the riot. Kate and Petra are there trying to gain control of the situation. When Petra discovers that Uldren and the Barons are gone, she immediately calls Kate to have him close off the only escape route. This leads to this epic scene. Kate now fights the Barons and loses. His ghost is killed and he is left beaten on the floor. This is where Uldren turns up. Uldren hates Kate. Not only Kate, but all Guardians. Everything that Uldren has been through these past years is all because of the Guardians, at least in his mind. He is consumed by this hatred, and at this point he is given a chance to invoke his revenge upon them, executing our beloved gunslinger. This kicks off the campaign that is mainly about us hunting down Uldren and his barons one by one. Uldren is trying to free his sister from the Dreaming City where she is apparently held captive. But not very far into the campaign we start to see signs that something is out of place. First of all, Uldren is more and more consumed by this darkness that we see in his eyes and on his skin. This darkness is the very same that Variks saw in his eyes and that was making his eyes itchy and sore all the way back from when he crash landed on Mars. It is the very same essence that dripped from his teary eyes down into the wounds of Fikrul, turning him into the first Scorn. The closer he gets to Mara, the more he seems to be enveloped in this darkness. He keeps communicating with this vision of Mara that seems to get more and more dark as the story goes on. Mara wants him to get a shot of the Traveler and take it into the Dreaming City to combine the light and the dark and free her from her prison. Uldren succeeds. He stands before a giant portal in the Dreaming City and Mara is urging him to free her at once. At this point you sense aggression and desperation in Mara's voice, like she's holding something back. Uldren though is too blinded by the darkness in his eyes and the love and longing for his sister that he just goes through with it. The darkness from within him is now fused with the light from the shard. We see Uldren completely free of this darkness that have been inhabiting him. He is ready to receive Mara into his open arms. At last he will get her back. At last everything will be restored. After everything he has been through, all the unspeakable actions that he has done, it will all have been worth it when he returns home with the Queen. Finally his tortured soul will have peace. But once again, Uldren's dreams turn into nightmares. Mara turns into this horrible creature called the Voice of Riven and swallows him whole. It has been this foul creature all along, toying with him, manipulating him, exploiting his grief for his sister to make him free this creature and set it loose on the city. The creature itself is part of the wish dragon called Riven. I won't go into the story of Riven in this video, but I will just mention this because it is important to Uldren's story. Riven is a wish dragon, or Ahamkara. This is a race of creatures within the Destiny universe that can grant wishes. But these wishes almost always end up being sour deals and mainly serve to accomplish the Ahamkara's selfish desires instead of the ones of the wisher. Do you remember the point in Uldren's story where he saves Vikrul? In his mind was this burning question and answer. Does he wish to save this poor being? Does he wish it? And he does. I think this is the exact moment where Riven the Wish Dragon starts to manipulate Uldren. What saved Vikrul was actually the magic of Riven granting a wish for Uldren without him realizing that that was what happened. At this point in time, all the dominoes were put in place that led up to Uldren finally freeing Riven in the end. So we then have to fight this Voice of Riven creature, and after killing it and getting Uldren out, we can finally avenge Cade. Just before Uldren's demise, he utters this legendary line.
Funny. The line between light and dark is so very thin. Do you know which side you're on?
After this, there is one final cutscene giving new life to the story of Uldren Sov, and it is this one. That is the last time that we have seen Uldren, but there have been some lore hinting at his whereabouts afterwards. I'll just read this one for you, since I think it's really well written. For the last 3 weeks, the Guardian has been camping in a rusted out shipping container, far off the main pathways that are always buzzing with sparrows. He stays out of the way of other Guardians, and if he can't do that, he keeps his helmet on, always. All he has to his name is some beat up gear, a ring, and a silk sheet. Those are the things that he woke up with. He wears the ring on a chain and keeps the sheet as a comforting reminder of something he can't remember. Sometimes he wears it draped over his shoulder. The fabric is so fine that it makes him think about the place he must have come from before his life, and how much nicer it is than where he is now. He spends his days alone. Other guardians are an unpredictable source of pain and confusion, and they see him the same way. Some react to him with outright hostility. Others are overcome with some personal and unexplained grief. He doesn't know why. That was the most painful lesson of being reborn. It's better to be alone. So he's always alone now, except for his ghost. One night, he sits with his head against his knees and listens to the distant snaps of gunfire. He hasn't seen anyone in about a week, but he can hear them. Somehow that makes the loneliness worse, more potent. Did you know? His ghost says, bright but gentle. The purple glint of his shell reflects the half-light outside the crate. That in the last city they are celebrating. They call it the Dawning. It's a celebration of friendship and hope and warmth. The Guardian keeps his eyes closed and forces down his bitterness. Silence lingers between them, heavy and filled with unsaid things, until his ghost gently bumps his shoulder. To feel good, they say to each other, Happy Dawning. Still the Guardian says nothing, and his own silence makes him sick with himself. His ghost has never doubted him. Never doubted anyone, really. He's a well of relentless optimism. And as infuriating as that is, it's also heartbreaking and comforting and a relief. The Guardian is not going to be the one to disappoint him. There's been too much disappointment in this life already. Happy Dawning, he says. So that until now is the end of Uldren Sov's story. A tale of unmatched sadness and pain. No other character in Destiny has seen such horrible pain and despair in their lifetime. Not to the extent of Uldren Sov, I think. His life so far has been one long trial of pain and suffering. The only thing that he ever wanted was to love and serve his sister and to be respected for doing so. This longing has led him down a path of hatred, making him susceptible to manipulation. His entire life he has been at the will of others, never able to break free and become entirely his own master. Even after he has died and been chosen by the Traveler as a guardian, he is still despised and outcast, doomed to live alone and hide from others, bitter and confused. And you can imagine, given his history with the Guardians, how he's going to feel once he realizes that he has now become what he despises most. Maybe in the future story of Uldren he will finally be able to redeem himself and earn his place within the tower. Despite what he has done, that is my hope for him. I think that Uldren has seen enough pain in his time. I can owe him some peace at last. If you want to connect with me or other gaming watchers, feel free to join the Discord, there's a link in the description. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like, and also if you want to see more content like this, you can always subscribe to the channel, and if you don't want to miss out on future videos, you can turn off the notification bell. Anyways, as always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.